Hi, everyone. Welcome to the download. This is our very first Community Tech Talk, and we're very excited that you're here to join us. This is Jessica Lordy. I'm here with my colleague Trish McCall, and we'll be moderating the event for you. As we get started, we'd like to go through some quick housekeeping. So first off, please share. Let other people know that you're here with us. Use our hashtag, which is Hpcc Tech Talk. And let's get the word out. This is brand new for us, and the more people that know, the better off we all are. Please also ask questions. There's a panel at the bottom of your screen, and we're going to answer as many questions as we possibly can following each speaker. Also look for polls at the bottom of your screen. So throughout our talk today, we'll be doing some polls and gathering some feedback from you. If you don't see those polls, exit your full screen mode or possibly refresh your screen if you're not in full screen and you still don't see them. Also, we welcome your feedback. At the end of this event, we hope that you'll rate us and leave us some comments today. Also, you can visit our blog after the event for more information. We'll have the presentation as well as answers to questions that we didn't get to during the event. And lastly, as we go through this, if you think that you have something that you might be open to sharing to our community and that our community could benefit from, let us know. There's an email address there, and we'll have more information at the end of the presentation. But keep in mind that we would really welcome future speakers. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and hand the presentation over to Flavio Villanustre. He's VP of Technology here at Lexus Nexus Risk Solution, and he heads up our Hpcc systems team. Flavio?
Thank you very much, Jessica, and thank you everyone for attending this the Download new webcast session. I first of all want to give a little bit of a background on why we decided to do this, and I hope you share the same excitement that I have today to start this cycle of multi-way communication across community members. As the brief description of the download says, this is an event by the community for the community. This is heavily technical. We want this to be meaningful. No content that is not technical, either around a new way the platform is used or a new capability that one of the developers in the community has created, or a new application for the platform will be consider match for this type of sessions. We would like for engineers and software developers and community members and users to really get the best we can give them throughout these sessions. And we want to encourage other community members to become presenters in the next download session or subsequent ones. We will have a rolling list of presentations that will be queued for the next sessions. The idea is to have one of these every month, and this will be limited to no more than 2 hours, and some of them might be shorter depending on the number of presenters that we get. But we want to ensure that we have very high quality content, very high quality presenters, and that, as I said before, this is something that is meaningful to those that attend, that can provide good insights on leading edge capabilities and things that have been used there, and that can be beneficial for everyone as a method of sharing content. Before, we used to limit ourselves to one community day a year, and there is so much content that you can pile up once a year, and sometimes the content is already old by the time we get to the time of the event. So having something that is more frequent and on a monthly basis means that we can have fresher content, that we can get more content. If we say that we can do 2 hours a month and we do this every month of the year, we can get 24 hours of content. This is more than 2 or 3 community days can offer. So without much more preamble, I want to introduce the speakers that we have, and I'm really, really pleased to have among the speakers Anirudh. He is the founder and CTO for Trilog Labs, who does It applies HPCC in a number of ways to do machine learning, natural language processing, and analytics for solutions for marketing and financial services. He has developed some capabilities that he will be talking about in this session, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did when we went through a dry run of this session before. Beyond Anirudh, we have Alan Robel. He is one of senior software engineers for LexusNexis and has also developed very cool capabilities around fast data updates in HPCC. Alan has been in the industry since a very long time ago, and I won't even though he has the time he started in the slide, I won't disclose it, but he has been around for as long as I have been, and he has a lot of experience, so it's a great talk as well. And last but not least, we have Lorraine, who has been in charge of our internship program and also a number of other community interaction events and programs throughout the years. She's been with the company for a very, very long time, and she's been in technology also for a very, very long time. And she brings the expertise, and she will convey to you some of the experience that we had in our internship program and what the internship program for 2017 is preparing for us. So it is a great pleasure to have these very highly talented developers and technologists among us today to talk about these things. And I hope again that you enjoy this as much as I have. And without more preamble, let's get Anirudh then. Anirudh, the floor is yours.
Hi. Thank you for the kind introduction, Flavio. Today I'll be talking a little bit about how to automate the ECL, and so there's like a templating library called Jinja 2, and so I'll be going into a bit more about how to use Jinja with a couple of examples. So to get started, I have a quick poll question. Have you used Jinja in the past, or have you heard of Jinja? So please click on the poll question and give your answers there. So moving on, I'll give you a brief background on what Trilog does, so that you get context of what we do and how we have applied Jinja to. So essentially, so for one of our major clients, what we do is we take all the transactions and a wide variety of data about their customers from 11 different sources, and it's like billions of transactions that we process month on month to do the marketing. And this at the core of our system is basically Hpcc doing all the heavy lifting. And around Hpcc we have built a number of we have built like an automation layer and containerization and so on. So and at the heart of the automation is basically we use Jinja and Airflow to do the automation. So I'll talk a little bit more about the problem, so that you see the context of why this thing came about. So in our work, we have around 450 data sets that we need to process and clean month on month. Every month we get like a refresh of these 450 data sets, and we also have historical data that's stored on the system. So there's around like 4 TB of the historical data and around 1 TB of data that gets refreshed every month. So in this process, what happens is like you have a large number of ECL scripts, and each data set is different, but you still need to perform X number of checks on each of those data sets. So to be able to do that on a regular basis for all of this data, we cannot really run it by hand. And there's a lot of boilerplate ECL code that you might have to write. So when we started out, we didn't we didn't realize that, the amount of boilerplate code, and so then we turned to macros and so on. But with macros, what happens is like, the code becomes extremely convoluted, and the syntax is not too friendly. So then we started looking at what other people are doing. So in the web development world, they use templates all the time to generate the websites on the fly. So that's where we found like Jinja too. So essentially, one of the primary reasons of using Jinja is it's a Python library, so and it's been in development for quite some time. So it's been it's fairly stable, and it has and using Jinja as a base, you can then leverage the full power of Python. So currently we use Jinja to primarily for automation, but we also use it for automating a hyperparameter tuning or for iterations during feature generation, or basically to do the data cleaning and the sanitization of the data. So I'll go ahead and give you like a taste of Jinja and how it can be used with ECL. So the Jinja is really simple in that there's just like a 4-step process. So you take your box standard like ECL file, and then you replace all the parameters with placeholders that Jinja can understand, and then you have a Python script which basically you can read from a database or from a CSV, and you can pass those parameters into your ECL, and boom, then you have like a full ECL file, and then you can just execute that ECL file as you would either through the command line, or if you have a scheduler, or anything else. So by digging into the example, we have like a really simple 2-line ECL here, which just calls the verify file command, and as you can see here, this is just like a file, and in step 2, what you do is you replace the file with a handle that Jinja can understand, so that all your text that remains the same, but then you can put this in a loop, and then boom, like Jinja is able to spit out it's able to inflate the template, and it can pick up all the parameters from wherever. And since this is Python based, you can connect to a DB where you store the metadata about your data sets, and then you can read from that DB, and then you can and you can populate this file, so that you have full flexibility, so you're not limited by anything. Moving on to the Python code, also is quite simple. It's just like a single function which basically leverages the Jinja library, and it's able to read from a CSV. So this code, you're free to use this code, and since the presentation is going to be available later on as well. Going into a more like a bit more complicated example, like here you can see that we have our own macro that we want to inflate. So we call our own macro, and then we pass it like a bunch of we pass it the right parameters, and then in stage 2 you can see that you can basically have all the parameters replaced with the Jinja 2 handles, and these handles you can have filtering, and you can do advanced manipulation here, and then you basically get something like this, where you can do this for all your 450 data sets, and then it's just like a 1-step process, rather than trying to use like shell scripts or macros to do this. And the primary advantage that we see is like being able to read from a metadata repository and being able to inflate the template. I think that's where Jinja 2 like really shines. this has enabled us to really automate our process and make it very smooth. So yeah, just to sum it up, one of the primary reasons we picked Jinja 2 was like, we were tired of the debugging macros and loops, we really wanted something which was a bit more flexible and which could read from a DB and be able to inflate the right parameters. And plus at the same time, since it's Python based, so we can also leverage the Python's vast ecosystem of libraries. And that's it. So I hope you like this presentation and you find Jinja useful. I just have another quick poll question. So would you be using Jinja and ECL together? Do you think it would be useful in your use case? So please let me know using the poll. And it was a pleasure to have you. And thank you very much. And over to you, Jessica.
All right, thank you, Anirudh. This is a really interesting conversation. So when I look at the poll, the initial one says that 97% of you, and there were over 45 votes, so that's quite a few. So 97% are not using Jinja today. Hopefully you've learned something that will be able to help you in the future. Just a quick reminder that your question box is at the bottom of the screen. If you don't see it, exit full screen mode and you should see it there at the bottom. We welcome any questions that you might have. We're going to go ahead and move to the first one. So how does Jinja 2 compare with ECL macros? In which ways is Jinja 2 better than ECL macros?
So to answer that question, I think there are two major reasons. The first one being ease of use, as in it's the Jinja 2 based files are much more easier to read, and the kind of text manipulation you can do with the Jinja 2 filters is not available with ECL macros. And secondly, the other advantage is again being able to connect to a database or any other system and to be able to pull the parameters from there to inflate the macro. I think those two are the key advantages. But having said that, one of the other advantages of the ECL macros is over Jinja 2 is like you can read from the Hpcc system directly. But having said that, the key to remember is you don't have to pick either. You can use both of them together. Like in the example 2, where we used the ECL macros and we used Jinja 2. So it's not an exclusive. It's not exclusive. So you can use both. Any other questions?
Yeah. Is Jinja 2 freely available?
Yes, Jinja 2 is an open source library and it's available on the BSD 2 license. It's been in development, so it's quite stable. So,
okay.
Any other questions, Jessica?
Yeah, just a few real quick ones. What kind of features does Jinja 2 support? Are there any that you haven't mentioned so far?
So there are. So it has the advanced the filtering and it also has the capability to create like a hierarchy of templates. So you can do inheritance and so on. So it's really cool and it's quite powerful.
Mm-hmm. And how stable is the library?
The library has been in development and it's widely used in the web development world. So it's quite stable and it's being used by quite a few people.
Okay, it looks like we have one more question here. How complex is it to set up the connection with ECL?
So the connection with ECL is actually quite simple. If you look through my presentation, you can see that you are not actually connecting to Thor or ECL, and all the manipulation is happening before the fact. So you're using Jinja only to generate the ECL code, and once the code is generated, then you would use your normal, you can either use the command line or whatever other method to invoke the ECL. So they are not tightly coupled at all.
All right, fantastic. So Anirudh's contact information is here on the screen, and it'll certainly be incorporated in the presentation deck, which you can download. But also remember, Anirudh's a very active member in our community, so please go out in the community if you have any questions, and some of the answers may already be there. All right, Anirudh, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate your coming.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica, and thank you, the audience, for joining in.
Okay. So I'd like to pass the controls over to Alan.
Afternoon or morning, wherever you are in the world. It's a pleasure to be here today and be on this initial presentation. Quite excited about it. I've been working with Lexus Nexus in the UK since 2011, since its inception in the UK. Initially with data operations, where I developed this package I'm just going to present to you. Now I've moved on to develop both on 4 and Roxy, so I'm actually using the packages that I developed as a data ops person. Anyway, going forward, right. Our requirements then and still now are that we get large data feeds, daily data feeds into 4. These data feeds are overlapped in time sequence, and so need to be the records need to be deduplicated on 4. And we also need rollback capability, so that if a particular build goes wrong, we need to be able to roll back a day, roll back to the previous build. Given that, we initially had a logical file, a single logical file holding all the data on 4. Effectively, we had a super file that was linked to a single monolithic logical file. This, after about 6 months of working, was obviously becoming untenable. Really, it meant that because we had to deduplicate, we only really need to deduplicate against the previous day's data set, but with a monolithic file, you've actually got to read the entire 6 months or how long you've been running file just to deduplicate against the previous day's data. Also, any ad hoc queries that support or business or anyone that asks you, these aren't queries that are supported by Roxy, these are just ad hoc one-off queries that you have to go to 4 to. So you do a query for yesterday's transaction, and again, you've got to read the entire 6 months worth of logical data just to do a probe on yesterday, a transaction that came in yesterday. There's also fringe benefits in archiving, of historic data, which I'll come on to later. So, okay then. So we moved away from monolithic logical files to coordinating multiple logical files. And I think the best way of illustrating what we've done is to just go through a series of examples with you. Right, so the first build you ever do produces one logical file, it deduplicates against nothing, and you generate a logical file for that particular day's feed there, and it's associated with one super file which we currently call current, and it's already created the 2 rollback generations, so we can roll back 2 days worth of builds. Okay, second day. So day 2, we get a second data feed again. This time it's deduplicating against records of the previous day, the 27th, and it's also generated a rollback capability in the father there, you can see. Day 3, the same thing's happened again. We've effectively got the 29th of November's data feed in. We're duplicating just against the 28th. Now, we don't have to touch the 27th data at all. So if 27th data was 20 terabytes, that's 20 terabytes we don't have to read or touch at all because we're only deduplicating against the previous day's data. And again, this rollback capability is maintained in father. Now, grandfathers contains the first day's build. Okay. Now, as it happens in the real world, sometimes you have to do multiple dip builds on one day. It happens. In those cases where we have to do more than one build on a day, we end up generating, again, a daily file, but this time we prepend a 002 count. So we have a counter at the end of our file names for our logical file. And again, that second build for that day is only deduplicated against that first build of the day. And then we get to the last day of the month. Now, okay, the same things happen. Now, when you get to, you can't have hundreds of daily files in a super file. It would just be totally unmanageable. Data operations, you wouldn't be able to maintain these. You wouldn't know the backup state, so it would be a nightmare to maintain. You can't really go on day just generating daily files. You have to do something about that. So on the last day of the month, we have an end-of-month process which rolls up every day file it finds into that month's file. So you can see what's happened there. If I go back, we've had, at the end of day, we've done the build for the last day, the 30th. We've got about 5 or 6 daily files in this example, and then we run a roll-up process for all our logical files that use this functionality. So we end up with a single month file, and that's all the data for that month in there. We could actually roll up month files at the end of the year. The last day of the year, you could logically just roll up month files into year files. We've not actually found in our particular business, we've not actually found that necessary because we effectively archive off after about 2 or 3 years. So we haven't found it necessary. But there's nothing to stop you in practice having year files as well as month files. So you get to the first day of a month. This is the first build of the month. Now this time it's going to deduplicate against a month's worth of data, which is okay, bigger than deduplicating against a day's worth of data, but it's still an awful lot quicker than reading an entire base file set in. And on our largest builds now take about 20 minutes every day. On the first day of the month, our builds go up to about 30 minutes instead of 20 minutes. So that's a slightly longer build, but it's still manageable within SLAs here. And again, all the while, every build, the rollback capability is maintained. So we get on to the second day of the month, and you can see that now the father has lost some files, but it now contains the rolled up month file for November in it. And I think that's all the examples I've got. Now that's for the building, so that made our builds orders of magnitude quicker, but it also allows ad hoc searches of 4 files to be done in a reasonable amount of time. As I mentioned earlier, you now can have functionality which allows you to generate a temporary super file, which is just a subset of some of those logical files. So we ourselves use about 4 interfaces. So for example, you can say, right, I just want the logical files that are pertinent to the date from and date to, or you can say, all right, I've got this particular date and I want all the data that's pertinent 3 days back or 4 days from that date, so days forward or days back. Or you can just say, I want the last 6 logical files, or I want the latest 6 logical files. And the 4th one is I want the latest n earliest files. I've never actually used that one, but we put it in for completeness. This means that instead of reading literally petabytes worth of data, if someone asks you a query about yesterday's transaction, you can give them an answer literally within minutes from that huge data set, because you really only gathered data from 1 day's worth of data. But you'd have to be a bit careful. The real world we live in, things aren't dated absolutely precisely, so we actually get slightly more than we need. So in other words, if you say date from and date to, we'll actually get you the day will also include the logical file from the day earlier on the logical file from the day later as well. So just to make sure we definitely catch every transaction. So this is a kind of, we err on the side of caution when selecting logical files to include in this temporary super file. And there's a third function, so the benefits I've already outlined. There's a third benefit, it's when you're archiving historic data, you don't have to do anything on 4 at all. Basically, you have to just take the month's data, the oldest month logical files, out of the current super file, put them back in your archiving server, and you've completed the the archiving of historic data. You don't have to touch for at all. It's just a drop from a super file and a move elsewhere. This has really been very, very useful on all our product lines in the UK in risk use this functionality. We've got a few poll questions. It'd be nice to know, actually, if you're already using something like this. It may not be exactly like this, but if you are using this kind of approach, it'd be nice to know. And if you aren't using this kind of approach and using Hpcc, do you think this kind of functionality would be useful for your business? While you're doing that, while we wait for the poll results, I would like to turn back to Jessica to move into the Q&A session.
All right, thank you, Alan. So just again, a quick reminder that the question panel is at the bottom below the presentation, and we certainly welcome any of your questions. All right. Here's a quick question. Can you share with us the number of IOPS the Thor cluster typically has? Just curious about all the data coming in.
I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure what IOPS means, but to talk about volumes, at the moment we're getting 50 gigabytes a day in. That has to be included in the 4 base files. I hope that's what IOPS is. Anyway,
all right. All right. If we don't have IOPS, right, just shoot another question in for us and we'll get that prioritized. We've got one person saying, very nice implementation. Thank you, Alan.
Oh, thanks.
Here's another question. How does one manipulate data held in a logical file using generic attributes when each of the file is tied to a specific layout?
Oh, that's a very astute question there from somebody. Basically, our library functions only use the DFU server. So all that functionality you saw is just basically logical file list to get the logical file list, moves, copies, and renames. We don't actually touch for at all. So all that functionality just works generically on any file type. The only functionality it requires for is that merge of daily files into month files. And that's achieved by using a callback function, where the parameters to that callback function are the list of temporary files to put into a super file and the target month file names. You get a list of daily file names, and then you get a second parameter, the list of the target month file name, and then the callback function itself must do the merge and generate the output. Really, it's 2 lines of code. Very trivial, really. So that's how we get over that one.
All right, quick check-in with the poll. It looks like 58% of the people are saying that they don't use this functionality today, but it would be useful for them in the future, and 34% are using it today.
Oh, right, yeah.
All right, to another question. Do you have to be at a specified version or above of the Hpcc systems platform before you can use this approach to manipulating super files or logical files?
Well, we had this in production at the end of 2012, so it uses nothing but standard DFU server functions. So, yeah, whatever version you've got, it will work at it.
All right. And to the person who had submitted the question before, IOPS, that's input, output per second. Alan, does that change your answer?
Well, I tell you the truth, I work on data operations, where the I/O, the actual machine configurations, is a different department from me. So I'm sorry. I'm afraid I'm going to have to not really answer that one, as the kind of stats on what's actually going on with IOs is done by different people, I'm afraid. Sorry about that.
All right, perfect. All right, we've got one last question here. Is this functionality available to the Hpcc systems community?
No, not as now. Basically, this presentation is about one approach used to manipulate superfiles and module files. It works for our business case. The ideas shown here may be applicable to your business, and if they are, they can really dramatically improve build times, and of course you've got those fringe benefits as well. That being said, out there is a proposal to make up a bundle of this functionality and make it available to the community on the Hpcc community site.
All right. Alan, if somebody is looking at implementing this type of functionality in the community, can they reach out to you, or can they find further information within the community?
Reach out to me, please do. You can either go via your tech email, or they can get my. How would they get to my email?
So your email is in the presentation?
Oh yes, yes, sure. Reach out to me.
All right, fantastic. Alan, thank you so much for your time today, and certainly thanks for being a guinea pig in our first implementation here of the download.
I've really enjoyed it. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for asking me. Cheers. Bye.
All right. So Lorraine Chapman is up next, and she'll be speaking on student opportunities with Hpcc systems.
Yes, hi everybody. Thank you for coming today. I'm going to talk about the opportunities that are available for students. There are 3 ways you can get involved in our program, and I'm just trying to forward the slide. There we go. So these are the 3 programs that you can get involved with, but you can't have a student program without mentors and without projects. So one of the things I'm hoping to achieve today with this presentation is to not only inspire anyone who may have links with students or be a student to get involved in these programs, but also anyone out there who may have a project idea that would be useful for our community, that would be suitable to be completed by a student, to get in touch and to let me know. And of course, anyone who would like to mentor a student completing one of these projects should do the same. So without further ado, let's move on. I'm going to talk about the similarities, the differences, and the timelines to give you the full picture of how these programs work. So all of these programs run over the summer recess. The dates are fixed for Google Summer of Code and the Lexus Corporate Intern programs. They both start in early June, and the Lexus Corporate Intern program ends in the 2nd week of August, and typically the Google Summer of Code program ends at the end of August. The Hpcc Systems Intern program is actually more flexible than that. We know that some countries organise their university semesters differently. For example, I know in the UK, because that's where I am, students don't finish studying until mid-July, and they don't go back until mid to late September. And we can accommodate this difference of semester dates on the Hpcc Systems program. We just need to know what those dates are that people are available before they start. All of these programs are paid programs, but in slightly different ways. So the LexisNexis program is salaried and paid in the same way as regular employees. The Google Summer of Code and Hpcc Systems programs are paid as stipends in installments, and these are based on the results of positive evaluations from mentors during and at the end of the program. And the scoring is simply pass or fail based on mentor feedback about progress and effort made. All of these programs require regular contact with a mentor. Mentoring on the LexisNexis program is limited to LexisNexis employees, but we can and we would like to encourage members of our community to get involved with our Google Summer of Code involvement if we are accepted this year, and our Hpcc Systems Intern program. If you have a project suggestion and you'd like to mentor yourself, or maybe there's a project already on our list that you would like to get involved with, then contact me. My email details will be at the end of the presentation. All students on all programs are expected to supply weekly updates which are particularly important for students who work remotely because they need probably a little bit more help to feel involved and invested in the work when you're working at a distance. These updates also help mentors to assess where a student may be stuck, maybe need additional help quickly, rather than finding out some way down the line when it can often be too late to do anything about it. All students produce a presentation at the end. The students on the Lexus Nexus program will present to their peers before the close of the program. The ones that are created by students who come to us via Google Summer of Code or the Hpcc Systems Intern program are used to create blog posts and other materials because we want to publicize what they have achieved to our users. What they contribute, obviously, is available then as new additional features that can enhance the use of our system. So with this in mind, we like to showcase what they have achieved also on our Community Day at our Engineering Summit. And one of our students has presented to the room 2 years running now. So moving on now to the differences between the programs. The Lexus Nexus corporate program requires students to come into the office. So that means if you apply to be part of this program, there needs to be one of our offices close by during the internship. And assistance is given to students who need to find accommodation if they don't live close by already. Students who come into the Lexus Nexus offices may find there are other interns working at the same location, and there may also be social and team building events to help them interact. The Google Summer of Code and Hpcc Systems programs support remote working, and this is easy for us because we have ourselves a diverse development team with developers across a number of different time zones. We've welcomed 8 students onto the Hpcc Systems Intern program so far since we started this program in 2015, and 6 of them have worked remotely from their mentor. Both Google Summer of Code students who worked with us in 2015 worked remotely. Both of these programs are also proposal-based. So what does that mean? Well, it means that students need to look at the list of projects we are offering and choose one that is of interest. They then have to prepare a proposal showing how they would complete the project they've chosen. Students and mentors can also suggest an idea to the list, but it's got to be relevant to Hpcc systems and of direct benefit to our users. I'm just going to talk a bit very quickly about what makes a good proposal. So the best proposals clearly show tasks to be completed and also a timeline for each week during the internship. The great ones also indicate the potential challenges that may be encountered, and these students tend to show some thought about how they might manage these challenges. But the most impressive students have made a real effort to get to know Hpcc systems by downloading the platform, taking a beginner training course, and running through the tutorials that we provide on our website. Students who have done this can clearly show how their project solution fits with the Hpcc system's requirements. In the month prior to starting coding, I organise a meeting with each student and their mentor so we can establish what needs to be done to make sure the student can start coding on the first day. And at the end of the first month, the first evaluation takes place. Both the mentor and the student complete an evaluation, which helps me as the administrator to assess how are things going and does somebody need any help. The student is paid the first stipend based on a favourable evaluation at this point, and then the second payment is paid under the same conditions at the end of the programme. Communication really is the key to any successful internship, and we have generally had very good experiences with the various intern programs. But the high flyers are definitely those who strike up a good relationship with their mentor from the beginning and keep in regular contact throughout. Although I'm always here to help if a student or a mentor needs to approach someone neutral. The students produce blog journals, which makes for great reading, not just because you get a record of what they've actually completed. They often record their thoughts and feelings in there, such as frustration when it's not going so well, or elation as a result of a light bulb moment, and I really find them a joy to read. So this is now the timeline for Google Summer of Code for this year. I should say at this point there are no guarantees that we will be accepted as a mentoring organisation, but I am preparing our application, and I'll post an update in the student programs area of our community forum as soon as I have news about that application. What we do know is that Google like to give preference to as many first-time organisations as possible, and we benefited from this approach in 2015. If we don't get accepted, we still have the Hpcc Systems Summer Intern program, as we have done so for the last 2 years. And in fact, actually, this is how the program started. So we got 2 slots in 2015 from Google Summer of Code, but we actually had the ability to take on more students. So we started the Hpcc Systems Intern program that year, and we welcomed 4 students onto it. And then we ran it again last year and took 4 more students. And we intend to continue running this program into the foreseeable future. So now looking at the Hpcc Systems Intern program, the proposal period is already open. It's actually been open since November. I do recommend that students contact mentors who are on hand to give advice and help students going down a rabbit hole. Having this early contact is actually quite a good test for the student-mentor relationship, and we consider how that process has gone alongside the proposal itself on identifying the successful applications. The introductory meeting that we hold ensures that both student and mentor have everything they need to proceed, as well as establishing the ground rules for regular communication, weekly updates, the blog journal, and checking in code and the code review process. So, our successes. How do you judge the success of a student intern program? Well, I guess as an organisation, you want to look at things like how many projects have completed successfully. And I'm happy to say that to date, all of ours have. The standard of students we have welcomed onto the programs has been incredibly high. We get the full range of students, from undergraduates through masters to PhD students. We've had 4 students returning to complete a second project with us, and 2 of those are actively seeking employment with us, and we are helping them to do that. And I think that's a pretty good record given the fact the program's only been running for 2 years. The projects they work on are, without exception, looking into how our users will want to use the Hpcc systems going forward. We've had 6 students implement machine learning algorithms. We've had 3 students work on graphical user interface improvements to provide visualizations of data. Another has worked on a code generator related project, and another on a security related project to control access to columns and deliver data from queries to end users. So there's a wide range of projects, and this year is no different. If you want to go and have a look at what's on the list, there'll be a link coming up in one of the final slides. We also do want our students to get something really worthwhile out of the experience. We want them to extend their learning, but we also want them to enjoy it, and we think they do. This is what they've told us in the evaluation forms. They have said that the experience has ticked these boxes for them, and I guess the fact that we've had returning students underscores this. They've also provided comments to us in their evaluations, and some of those you can find on the Student Wiki. There's a page up there where I've tried to record what students have said about working with us. So, having mentioned the project list a number of times now, I'm wondering how many listeners may be interested in contributing an idea to it. So we're running a quick poll here to find out, and we'll get the results at the end of my presentation. So if you need more information, these are the best places to go. The proposal list is still changing at the moment, so keep checking back. it's going to be finalised in the next 2 weeks, and then those will be the projects for this year. There's plenty of help on the wiki also, so do take a look. There are actually 2 student wikis. One is specifically aimed at Google Summer of Code, and the other is for those who are interested in the Hpcc Systems Intern program. Do take a look at both. They're quite similar, but they also have their differences. You should look at both. Perhaps you also want to look at the work that the students have already done for us. Well, there's information about that too on the wiki. There's also a number of blogs. I wrote a couple of blogs featuring all of our students in 2015, and this year I've been writing individual blogs about each student that has completed work with us in 2016, and you can find those in the blog area of the Hpcc Systems website, hpccsystems.com. If you're interested in knowing more about Google Summer of Code, I suggest you visit their website for more information. And as we get close to the deadlines for Google Summer of Code and the final proposal deadline for our own program, I will be posting updates in the Student Programs Forum on the website. So subscribe to that feed and the blog to keep updated. And finally, a few contact details for you, and just some reminders of 2 of the important places to get information. So thank you for listening. I hope you've been inspired to contact me to be a mentor or to tell me about project ideas that you think would be great for students to complete as part of the intern programs. And now I'm going to hand back to Jessica for questions and answers and the result of the poll.
All right. So far, it looks like we have several votes in from the audience, Lorraine, and it looks like approximately 35–40% of the folks have some ideas for student project suggestions. If you have ideas, please reach out to Lorraine, because I know she'd be really interested to hear more. So before we turn everything over to Lorraine to answer her questions, we had one come in on Alan's presentation. I want to bring that up really quickly. So Alan, what functionality or what information is available to the open source community on the superfile?
Yes, right. This question's come in that there is a standard library, but there's an awful lot of manipulations of superfiles, logical files, and goodness knows what. And someone's tweeted that superfiles functions are available, but this particular functionality I was showing you is not. You won't be able to do that using the STD standard library. The nearest you've got to it in the STD is promote superfile list, but that does a complete replacement of one file from generation of superfile to another. So if you've got a petabyte file in current, yes, it will move all the data in current to father, but that's a whole petabyte of data. There isn't functionality in what is released in the standard library, but will actually allow you to just move over particular logical files from one generation to the next. So no, the functionality isn't there as standard. I just wanted to clarify that point.
Okay, wonderful. Alan, thank you so much.
That was important, so thanks for that.
Yes, and if anyone has any additional questions for Alan, if this looks like it would be interesting for you and you're not sure how to move forward, reach out to Alan and he can provide that clarification to you. All right, Lorraine, we're going to go ahead and start with some of your questions. We've had some really good ones come in on the intern program. So here's the first one. I'm a community member but not a Lexus Nexus employee. Can I still become a mentor in the Hpcc Systems intern program?
Absolutely, yes. The only time a community member can't become a mentor in the student programs is for the Lexus Nexus corporate program, which is run by a different department and is purely internally run by the HR division. But if you want to be a mentor for the Hpcc Systems intern program, I would absolutely welcome members from the community joining with us in that. And it's the same for Google Summer of Code as well. The only difference with Google Summer of Code is that you have to register yourself to be a mentor on the Google Summer of Code program. But that really only happens at the point once organizations have been accepted, but then I would be able to work with community members to make sure that they knew how to be a mentor for that program. But for our own program, absolutely, I would welcome that.
All right, that's wonderful news. All right, have there been people who've completed this program more than once in different years?
Yes, again, we've run our own program for 2 years, and we've had a couple of students who have come back to complete projects with us. So that's been really great news for us to do that. So yes, we haven't really put a limit on that. I don't think I would want to fill all of the places with returning students, because obviously you want to get new blood in there, but I'm open to any student applying more than once.
All right, here's a really interesting question, Lorraine. Are internships only for the summer in the Northern Hemisphere, or do they happen at other times during the year? So, for example, recess for the Southern Hemisphere, which is January through March.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, isn't it? I'm sorry that I hadn't really sort of considered that there could be such a great difference between the Northern and the Southern Hemisphere. I guess my answer to that is that I'm certainly open to the suggestion. I would not want to feel like I would turn away a great student just because they didn't happen to be in the right location. So the thing to do, if there is somebody in that situation, is to approach us and speak to us about it, and we can have a dialogue about it.
So, Lorraine, we have a question. It says, will the intern program provide housing, transportation fee, or a moving stipend to intern students? And it doesn't clarify which program specifically, so I don't know how you'd like to answer that.
I guess I'm going to sort of like break this up by program. That's probably the easiest thing. The stipend that is paid through Google Summer of Code is actually nothing to do whatsoever with Lexus Nexus. It is purely paid by Google. Obviously it's a Google-run program. And I would say the majority of students who join that program will be remote working, and they basically get paid a flat rate for the program, and that's just the way it is. I'm not aware that there are any additional provisions made there for relocation or traveling costs or housing. The same is kind of true for our Hpcc Systems intern program to a point. We did have one student this year who chose to work in the office in Boca Raton, and we certainly provided help with housing. I'd have to check back with HR to find out what it was that they provided in terms of financial assistance. I'm not aware that there was any sort of increase in the stipend to cover that. Again, it's more of a sort of, flat fee, really aimed, I suppose, at students working remotely. The majority of our students who join this program also work remotely. But I can find out about that and post a response somewhere. So the Lexus Nexus intern program, I think I would have to defer answering that question to Rennie Midter, who is the person who runs that program. I would not want to speak for her. So whoever has asked that question, if they would like to email me at the address that you can see on your screen now, then I will get a response and reply directly.
All right, Lorraine, it looks like we've got one more question here. What is the code check-in and review process for interns?
Well, this question, I think, really is geared to the Google Summer of Code and the Hpcc Systems intern project in the main, I would think. And any students on the Lexus Nexus program who happen to be working on Hpcc systems related projects. Remember, a lot of Lexus Nexus interns may not actually be working in Hpcc systems at all. They may be working in other areas of the business. But if you're working on a coding project that is related to Hpcc systems, then basically you almost become like a sort of a developer on the team, like any other developer. So the check-in and review process for code is exactly the same as it would be for any other developer who is working on the project regularly. So we use GitHub for this, and a lot of these things are covered at the meetings that I have with mentors and students. And in fact, in all honesty, most students are fairly au fait with the way we do things before they even start the coding period, because they sometimes tend to like to go and have a look as they're creating their proposal. So I think actually the code and check-in review process is actually fairly standard and understandable.
All right, thank you. So, Lorraine, thank you so much for your time today. This has been a really interesting presentation and definitely lots of really good questions from the audience. At this point, before I hand it back over to Flavio, we're going to release one more poll, and this poll is asking how frequently you'd like to have these Tech Talk sessions. What would be most valuable for you? So please look for that poll and give us your answer. And while you're down there at the bottom of your screen, look for the feedback tab. We would very much welcome your feedback on how things went today, any comments you might have on things, how we can do things differently. So Flavio, I'm going to hand it back up to you for the wrap-up.
Thank you very much, Jessica, and thank you everyone for staying throughout the poll and throughout the entire Tech Talk event. It is a little bit sad to see this finishing today. It was very, very exciting for me. I hope it was as exciting for you. I think we had very high-quality presenters today, and I would expect that we would be having the same type of quality in future sessions. Now, there are a few things that are housekeeping items that I want to go over. One of them, and this is probably the most important one, is we need presenters. We need people that want to talk about things that they do. We want people that want to talk about experiences, about new applications, new uses of Hpcc, capabilities that they would have used or developed in the past, tidbits of ECL code or any other code they have done in Hpcc, integration projects with Hpcc and other open source platforms. Anything that could be of interest for the community or you would like to share, that is quite important. And as I mentioned before, we will have a rolling list of presentation opportunities or people that are enrolling to present in the wiki, and you can see the wiki URL on the screen now. And if you'd like to be a speaker for one of the upcoming sessions, please send us an email. The email address is also there, techtalks@hpcsystems.com, and we will be very happy to help you throughout the process and getting your presentation ready and the talk ready, as successful as it is today. One thing that is quite important too is please share this, please use social media. If you haven't tweeted today throughout this entire Tech Talk, shame on you. Please do so. Make us known, make this session successful and future sessions successful by letting your friends know. And if you use Hpcc and you love it, please make that also known as well. And again, thank you very much for staying throughout this entire session. I would like to just go back to Jessica to review the results for the last poll and see how we have done there. What the community members want this frequency for these Tech Talks to be. So Jessica, do you have the results there?
All right. It looks like 45% are thinking once a month is the right time frame. Next up is once every other month with 23%. So I think we'll need to step back and look at that and figure out what's most appropriate, but for sure the winner is once a month. The second thing I wanted to say is feedback from our audience. So far we don't have a lot of feedback in, but we really want to know what you have to say. Please know that everything that you're submitting here is anonymous. We actually don't see who the questions are coming from or who the feedback is coming from or who the poll results are coming from. So please submit your feedback. Know that it is anonymous, and we really are very interested in what you have to say. All right, this concludes the first edition of our Community Tech Talks. Thank you very much for joining us on the download. More information will be available on our blog as well as on our wiki, and Bright Talk will have this recording available for replay. It's another reason why we're using this technology, is that it gives us the benefit of having this content be live in the future. So if you've missed this, or if you know others who missed it, please refer them to the Bright Talk link, and they can watch the presentation at their leisure. Thank you so much.